Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you're calling in from today. Thank you so much for being here. And today is Fielding Graduate University's Virtual Open House, part 5 of our series today. So if you've joined us for any of the other prior series to learn more about Fielding, thank you for attending to learn more. If you weren't able to attend live, just as a reminder, all of those events were recorded and they are up on our website at fielding.edu. Today's part 5 is a program-specific Q&A for anyone interested in our PhD in Human Development or our PhD in Organizational Development and Change. So if you're here for that purpose, you are in the right place. And if any of you joined us for the prior series or an information session, you're familiar with the three of us listed on the screen: Dorothy Agargupta, our doctoral faculty for the School of Leadership Studies, Erica Fichter, our Director of Recruitment, and myself, Caroline Wedderburn, who is the Senior Admissions Advisor here at Fielding. Would you like to take a moment, introduce yourselves?
Sure, welcome. And it's so nice to have you join with us today. I am Dorothy Agargupta. I've been a doctoral faculty and part-time administrator at Fielding for quite a few years. And I am delighted to speak with you about Fielding and about either of these two programs. You have a great group of people here with you today. So all the questions you have, glad to answer them here and in any follow-through conversation. So welcome.
And hi, everyone. If you've joined us for any of our prior events, like Caroline mentioned, I'm sure you're familiar with me by now, but if not, I'm Erica Fichter, Director of Recruitment and Admission at Fielding. We really love this series and hope you've been able to enjoy it. It's really important for us that you get all of your questions answered and that you feel really comfortable with your decision to move forward with your doctoral program. So I'm excited for you to be here today and looking forward to a great event.
Great, yes. And as I mentioned, I'm Caroline Wedderburn, the Senior Admissions Advisor at Fielding for many of the programs within our School of Leadership Studies. And I'm located in Santa Barbara, California, where we're headquartered as well. So great to see many of you here. Looking forward to helping you explore our programs as you proceed. And now at this time, I'm honored to introduce our current students in the program who have so graciously offered to share their experience with us and just provide a little bit more insight for all of you at what the student experience is like. So welcome Christine Harrison and Cynthia Wilson. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself, and we can dive into some questions on the screen and then any other questions that our prospective students might have for you.
Oh, I guess I'll go ahead. I'm Cynthia Wilson. I'm a first-year doctoral student. I'm in the organizational development system curriculum. And I thought that I would tell you a little bit about my experience in this way. And that is, so what is your topic of interest? So that is one of the questions you'll get in orientation. What is your topic of interest? And for me, it was such an exciting question because I have held my topic of interest close to my heart. And so to be able to say out loud in public that my topic of interest is to look at the 1 to 10 wealth gap between net worth between African Americans and white Americans, to be able to say that in public is somewhat, it was exciting, but also empowering. And so at Fielding, one of the things is that this question, what is your topic of interest, is something that you carry with you into each of your courses. And so I have been able to take this question and look at it from a public policy point of view. And then I've been able to take the same question and put it under the microscope in different research ways. And so I can look at it and say, now how would I use this question if I was going to do research that involves interviewing folks? Or how would I use this topic? How do I look at this topic if I'm going to do it through the lens of maybe looking at census data? And so for me, it has been exciting to say, and empowering, what is your topic of interest? And then in fielding, we often have opportunities to talk to, well, our professors, of course, but also other colleagues. And so colleagues will ask questions about what your topic of interest is. And that is like, wow, somebody else is interested in what I have to do and what I'm thinking. And so that's very encouraging. And then also you get to hear what other people are interested in. So you might have somebody who is interested in infertility, and what are the emotions related to it? And or someone who's looking at loneliness with seniors, and can I contribute to that conversation? So I would say that whatever your topic of interest is, whatever catches your attention and your eye when you are scrolling through Facebook or whatever, or looking at the news, that fielding gives you the opportunity to explore it through your colleagues, through the courses, and then also through the readings and assignments that you get from faculty members. So if there is something, and I hope there is for you, some topic that you hold close to your heart, then fielding HOD with both the human development as well as the ODC. They give you the opportunities to look at it through many lenses and then say, let me just add my touch to it. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight about my experience. And I'll pass the mic to Christine. I don't want to just hold on to the mic and not let someone else speak. Oh, you're still on mute. It's not the story of Zoom.
Thank you. And I am in La Madeleine between appointments, so I hope I'm not too distracting with any background noise. Is it seemingly okay? Okay, good. So thank you, Cynthia. Grab that mic back at any point. I welcome that. I'm Christy Harrison, and just finishing third year. All my coursework is done, and I'm in the dissertation phase. And Dorothy will know that we got a great email yesterday that approved my IRB, which is the Institutional Review Board. It's the Ethics Committee of the university, which says you're clear to begin doing what you intend to do to people or with people in order to do your study. And that was really exciting. And Dorothy has happened to have been my mentor, and she is my dissertation chair as well. And so excellent guidance. So this group it's exciting to have Dorothy as a part of this, because she has shepherded me through the process, and her goal is to get it done. I loved her phrase at the very beginning: the best dissertation is a done dissertation. And so we're working toward that goal. So I'm also an HOD. I did the master's degree in HOD, and the dissertation is in HD, human development. I come from a consulting background, corporate America, but before that I come from education, and I'm going to expand from my perspective on what Cynthia was saying about the research question. That my experience has been a delightful one, and partly because I have been able to explore my topic of interest in every KA, which is what we call a course at Fielding. Whether I had 2 colleagues or 6 colleagues or 10 colleagues or an independent study, whether I was taking ecological justice or advanced organizational development or advanced human development, or whatever I was taking, systems class, I was always allowed to explore my topic through that through my lens and the lens of the course. And for me, that was important. I am a late in career graduate student, and the work-life balance was tricky. I was on the road as a consultant for the first 2.5 years, and then I took a break so that I could just be focused on the dissertation, and I'll go back to work. And so for that, I would say, I'm just kind of running through the questions a little bit. Advice for prospective students is consider how you can incorporate your questions and your area of interest in each, instead of it's okay at fielding to ask the faculty member, here's what I'm interested in. How can I do it through the lens of your class? That's not only okay, it's encouraged. So that has been valuable to me to learn to embrace that, which isn't always easy. My topic is I'm examining the racial conditioning of white female elementary school teachers who teach Black and brown children predominantly. And that's a intimidating conversation, let alone topic. And so as I looked at and read and did systems research for systems class, and then filtered my reading and trying to understand, so in this system, how are we looking at this through the lens of white teachers who are teaching Black and brown kids? And what's the system doing to support either one of those groups? Sometimes the answer was, hard answers. So that's an example of how I have approached this program. There are some times when it's stressful. And one thing, I think Dorothy and I were having a conversation the other day that may have triggered her to say, why don't you come and participate in this panel today? Something that I learned early from my NSO, my new student orientation, which when I was in higher ed eons ago, I used to direct new student orientation programs. But what I heard there was that all this information, all this stuff I should do to get ready to be a graduate student, and I should meet with the librarian regularly. I should set up my bibliography reference material software early on. I should do all these things, which was, all this fire hose of information. But with a good, close relationship to a mentor like Dorothy and an advisor like Dorothy, she kept reminding me just in time, or 2 months ahead, or 6 months ahead, or a year ahead. And remember what we talked about to do that? Start doing it now. and she would look at me like, I'm serious. And then she would ask me a month later, have you started that? And she wasn't leading my by the hand, or I was taking the initiative to do as she followed. But I think that's an important part of my experience, that there's a lot of stuff here at Fielding, and a lot of people, and a lot of knowledge, and a lot of experience. Some people try to go it alone. Some people, there might be their model, like I'm supposed to be ruggedly independent and all of that. And it is with distributive learning and blended learning, all those are obstacles to be overcome, not to be the reason we don't. And the faculty here have been very engaging with me, and that would be my biggest piece of advice is find that mentor, believe in the process, stick with it. They can be your advocate and your helper. And we might go and not do that by nature as being adults, being students, being Americans, rugged individuals, believing in rugged individualism. But if you know my work and white studies and white development, we know that that's kind of a myth too. So I'll leave it there and leave that for people to investigate. So does that help a little bit in terms of Emily and Caroline, your expectations, or Erica and Caroline?
And I wanted to say a little bit more about experience, not so much in terms of the actual research, because that is exciting, and I think some of it is whatever each individual invests. And also, I have found it fascinating to listen to colleagues who live all over the states as well as globally. And so in one of the classes that I had this week, there was someone from Vermont and 2 people from Canada, and someone else from British Columbia, well, which is of course Canada. Anyway, they talked about Cascadia and the impact of the heat wave a week and a half ago. And we also had someone who talked about the mass graves in Canada of Indigenous children. And so it is just, there's a piece of fielding where we also, even though it's virtual, get to connect as human beings and hear something that is, I'm going to say, beyond the bubble that I'm in, and find out what other folks are experiencing. I think that fielding allows that and supports that interaction, and also supports the interaction with faculty. And so it isn't as if faculty are at arm's distance. I mean, there really is one where faculty can say, here, I think this newspaper article, even though it's not something that is in a scholarly journal, here's an article I think that you'll find interesting, or here's a book that I think you'll find interesting. And so what happens over time is that because of sharing with the faculty, then they begin to see your own interest and can then direct some thinking to, you're not just like like a number, but actually a person with a project which the faculty member also then in some ways becomes engaged in. And that too helps, is empowering, and saying that this really makes sense, and adds to the challenges, because there are, the challenge of, as in the question, work-life balance, there really is always this balancing, but knowing that there is support, and that from the faculty and peers, and that for me, as well as my own desire, that helps with the times when we say, I've got 2 papers due on the same day, and both have to be 10, 12 pages. How am I going to do this? So I hope you have hours.
I'd really like to add something to what both Christy and Cynthia have just said. As a faculty person, we stay as faculty members because we love continuously learning together in a learning community. And for example, next week in the School of Leadership Studies, which includes both Human Development PhD and Organizational Development and Change PhD students and alumni and faculty, we have one of our virtual sessions. Sometime post-COVID, these will be in person, optional, always optional, but we'll have more in person, which we haven't had at all for quite a bit, for quite a while. And in these sessions, they are small workshops, 2-hour-long workshops in a variety of different areas. And all of the workshops that I'm involved in, we have another faculty and we have some alumni as well as students who are sharing their work. We work together closely in this. And for example, one of the workshops that I'll be giving is on bias and in artificial intelligence and all of the different tools that are available now and that we use daily, and the ways in which they are really engaged in social engineering our lives. And for this particular workshop, which happens to be in one of the areas that I work in, we're looking at a wide variety of ethics. And as Cynthia noted, there are very different belief systems and principles associated with ethics based on your culture, based on where you live, and they're not necessarily compatible. Doing the right thing depends upon your foundational belief systems. So this particular workshop will have very active engagement of a couple of alums who have just graduated in the area, students who are working in the area, and lots of students from around the world who are also very interested. And we all come together. We come together via Zoom. We come together in a lot of online conversation. Sometimes they're just student panels. Sometimes we have regular town meetings just for students. And perhaps Caroline, Cynthia, or Christy, you could talk briefly about some of the different ways the town meetings that the students are having that are quite often led by students, not just by faculty, very, very engaged relationally in high quality doctoral scholar practitioner learning.
Yeah, certainly. I'll speak briefly to the town hall process, Dorothy, and then Shane had a question that I'm willing to go back to as well. In the town, I applaud the university for bringing the student community together to examine. Sometimes there are, like in any organization, there are challenges and there are things that aren't working for students and may not be working for the system in general. And students, no matter what level of education one is at, it's usually students who disrupt and make noise about what they perceive as an injustice. And students have done that at Fielding from time to time, and we're engaged in a little bit of that right now. And the faculty and the administration are listening and acknowledging and making space to have conversations and to see where the university can evolve so that more students are served in better ways. So I think it's great that we're doing that. If I could take a moment to speak to Shane, for me, I'm an adult student at the time with a full-time job, and I was consulting all over this country. And every time I went to California, and I talked about what I was interested in, I was getting ready to go back to graduate school. And I live in Houston, so I was thinking about Rice University here and also the University of Houston. And I'm from Michigan, so I was thinking about the University of Michigan. But every time I was in California, people would say, well, what about Fielding? I'm like, I don't know about Fielding. And then I started to come back to Houston and talk with people, and I would say, has anybody heard about Fielding? And people would say, yes. And I was surprised that I did not know this had a national reputation. I think, their grounding in the School of Psychology was their early entry into, and Dorothy will correct my history, but I think generally that's where it really has an impact. And as we've grown the School of Leadership Studies, that ability to be remote, by no means would I call this online learning. I mean, I've put through 2 kids through college, and sometimes they had an online class, and I'm like, is that even college? Why am I paying for that? This is not online learning. This is distributed learning. It's distance learning. And the fact that we get together in the sessions that Dorothy has talked about allows, for me, I took advantage of it every time. Now, it had to be built into my budget because there's an expense to travel once or twice a year for a week and be face-to-face with colleagues. And oftentimes I started one of my classes at an in-person session in the summer or winter. So we were all together, we were talking for a workshop or maybe a workshop or 2, and then we would go off and do our thing and come together through Zoom meetings. We were Zooming way before we all in the world had to Zoom, and we were adept at it. So it was like seamless to continue school on that front for us. So those are some of the reasons, and also the ability to get up close and personal with faculty was my idea, to not do their research. In a lot of graduate programs, you're working for somebody else and you're doing their work. That was not so appealing to me at my stage in my career. And I also took advantage, and I'll add this before I turn to Cynthia to improve my remarks. There are intensives that are offered at Fielding, which is times for people to get together in a certain locale and start 2 or 3 classes with a group of 10 or 12, 15 or 6 other people. For example, I took social and ecological justice by attending an intensive on Gabriella Island in British Columbia. So we spent 5 days together looking at some very specific things. We had a very big, extensive reading list ahead of time. And then we went back to our own separate ways, conferred with each other a little bit, but wrote and explored and did our own research on our own topic based on what we had exposure to in that setting. I did another one in Washington, D.C. for 3 or 4 days on resilience and appreciative inquiry toward one of my human and organizational development and change curriculum. So I've taken a lot of advantage of the times I could be in person. I created those spaces. And for me, they were on my time, not necessarily because the calendar said, and that allowed the flexibility for my workspace and my family space as well.
Well, as a first-year student, I'm somewhat constrained by the pandemic, so we've not had the in-person opportunities. However, I did want to answer Shane's question regarding how did I choose HD or ODC. And actually, when I enrolled under human development. And then after taking a few courses, then I said, really, my interest in looking at my topic of interest, looking at the wealth gap, is not really so much the individual, which would be under human development, but is more systemic. It is looking at some of the pieces that relate to systemic racism. And so I felt that looking at the organization, even looking at the United States as an organization, that made more impact, that was more important. And so I would say it's only been in the past, since the beginning of this year, that I have switched from human development to looking at organization change and development. And but it is, as I continued to look at my topic under the microscope to get a little closer to what it is that I think that I can do with this topic. And so to answer the doesn't that always happen? To answer the second part of your question, what do I want to do? I mean, that is a bit perplexing. I had thought about faculty and actually did a paper on African-American women who are faculty, and the percentage is minuscule. Something like 3% of faculty in institutions of higher learning are African-American women. And then of those that are tenured, it's something like a fraction of 1%. And then I'm sure you all have seen the Nicole Hannah-Jones controversy at University of North Carolina. I mean, tenure. We are in a culture where faculty, African Americans as faculty, is very, it's a difficult, very difficult path. That was not isn't my primary interest. I'm very interested in public policy and being able to in some way be able to influence or help guide public policy. And right now I'm thinking about in terms of decisions that are made regarding businesses, small and mid-sized businesses. And so that has me looking at how are businesses funded? What do private equity companies do? So it really is looking at, I'm sort of zoning in a little bit on not so much the faculty part, but on public policy. I'm curious as to whether that answers your question, Shane.
I can address a little bit of what Rose has asked, and I think Shane did too, and I didn't address that part of the question. In terms of transforming my own career possibilities, I come out of this corporate America, capitalism 2.0, but my background is in higher ed, and several of my clients have been higher education institutions and medical schools, other large universities, and those are the spaces that I really start to jive in. I speak that language and feel like what higher education is contributing to the greater good. It really resonates for me. So I see my career continuing back in higher ed. I work with the Center for Healing Racism in Houston, which is associated with Houston Community College. And then I have these other clients in higher ed, because people know me, where we're starting to talk with leadership about the systemic racism. We're going beyond the diversity and inclusion conversation and saying, you know, look what we've got here. We've got a problem that systemically is about racism. And the leadership is beginning to start to talk about that. But for me, in an institution of higher education, I needed the credentials. I already had a master's degree, but I needed the credentials of the PhD to have a better entree into that room with the other folks who have them. And so for me, that was an important step for me to have that. And it's been an unexpected, interesting journey, and with other colleagues too. Yeah, I'm a student reader on, one of my friends is on her dissertation. She examined international travel and experiences during the college years or graduate school years and the impact that had on later career development. Well, that was cool. Plus, she and I in our conversations got to talk about, and was there any part of a race dynamic going on there? And she's like, So she looked into it a little bit. So that was neat. I'm a student reader for another one of my friends who's looking at the impact on millennials of flexible workspace. Well, that's a big thing. And she was doing this long before COVID hit. This is her area of interest. And she and I have had conversations about, and what are the jobs? And is there any racial disparity? And are you going to include that in your dissertation? Just to look at that too, on who's getting to have these flexible work arrangements. And she's like, yeah, you're right. And she's very, very astute at all of this. But we've been able to dialogue about that too. So I'll just add that in to address the question. Cynthia?
Okay. Well, you know, I see the question regarding what were my biggest fears. I don't know that I really came in with a fear. I mean, I was always concerned about, you know, would I be able to find a footing? And would I be able to find a sense of community? And particularly with this, with the, as Christy has said, this distance learning, how would I become a part of this community? And is it possible to be part of the Fielding community? No, I didn't know. How can I feel accepted? And is it okay to ask questions? And so I would say it was more just, you know, a sense of what is the unknown. And I would say by the completion of my second trimester, that I sort of felt like I, you know, had my footing. Now, I would say it would not be until now, where I am now into my third trimester, it sounds like pregnancy, but that I've been able to really say that, to say to the world that I am a doctoral student. I had sort of been tiptoeing around that. One other thing I did want to say about Fielding and what attracted me to Fielding is the diverse student body. So some of that is in the marketing of Fielding, and it does market itself as a university that looks at social justice. And so that was very attracting to me. What I have found also particularly, I guess, helping me feel at home is that the student body is diverse. And so what happens is that means that, in a sense, all are accepted. So we have students who are Indigenous or Native American, and who are proudly so and able to share some of their culture. there are folks here who are deeply religious. You know, one of the courses I was in was with someone who is a Catholic priest, and that is it. Um, it's a perspective that somewhat, in a way, for me anyway, humanized the Catholicism in a way through the priest eyes. There are people who are looking at disability because of themselves having a disability. There are folks who identify as queer and and talk about what their experiences are. We have folks who are Asian Pacific and have shared some of the discrimination actually that they have experienced in this country, and also some of what their families have experienced. So I would say that it is just interacting with the student body has been a part of my learning. I would say that as a university, that I think I would have to give Fielding, gold marks and stars for being able to recruit a diverse student body. I think Fielding is still struggling with, what do we do at the faculty level?
Yeah.
How do we have diversity at the faculty level? That is harder. And what does it really look like? So it is, in a way, I'm kind of uh, pleased to be part of this growth period. So I am growing, but I also see Fielding growing, and I have found Fielding open to listening to how students can say, here is a point, here is a direction in which Fielding can grow. So, did I miss another question?
Oh, thank you so much to both of you. I believe, Christy, did you have to head out? Um, if you need to head out at this time, we just wanted to thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be there. I'm going to jump off video, but stay on my phone. I
Okay.
don't know how long is your session planning to last.
We have
The full
about 20
hour.
more minutes. If anyone does still have questions, I just know you had sent a note that you might have had to leave around 10:40.
Yeah, yeah. And I hope that we can address Asa question about the dissertation classes and the coursework, and just understanding the sequence. In the non-dissertation courses are just the meat and potatoes. Everybody's got to take quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis, and a PhD requires that we know how to do the research. So those are taken, and we need to have an understanding of systems. The PhD is about thinking in new ways, and Cynthia alluded to that. It's about thinking critically in new ways and exploring and intellectual humility. It's about a lot of and writing and being able to express our arguments and our thinking based on what we read in the literature, based on how it might impact ours. And so the foundational courses that we take all feed into that process. And then once you do that, the actual dissertation are more like milestones. Got to get your concept paper done, and you have to have that reviewed by a committee, and you get some credit for that, a couple of hours credit for that, because it's work. It's to pull the literature review together, and then you got to pass a comprehensive assessment, and that takes work. And so it in that sequence just sort of plays out in a natural format, and the classes feed into it. So I'll just say that and then I'll get off video.
Well, I want to answer speak to Rose's question, and that is regarding the dissertation. So I'm taking a knowledge area, which I find absolutely fascinating, and it's called media technology. It's got a long name, but really what it is, and I took it specifically for this, and that is, how do you use media in your work, whatever it is that you're looking at? And actually, we've looked at a couple of videos, but now there is the possibility of doing a dissertation that is a documentary. It could be a film. That the way that information is communicated can be done in a variety of ways. Now, of course, the tradition is something that is a scholarly paper. However, with the world today being more increasingly visual, that there is the possibility of doing it through other mediums. It could be, for example, using artwork that supports a written piece. I could envision it being spoken word. But what I am aware of and what I have actually seen are what I would call documentaries. And so, in fact, I just had the class, we had one session last night, and it's just very invigorating to listen to the possibilities that looking at video, film, music, that the possibilities that are opened. And of course, now most universities, and the professor last night said that even at Fielding, it isn't generally accepted that something other than a 300-page dissertation is accepted. However, even at Fielding, he was saying that there have been dissertations that have been 100% video. So it is one of the pieces that I have held on to that I thought was just wonderful is that there is a thought, and that is, who is your audience, and what is your message? And so if your audience, if you want to reach a broad audience, then you might think about, maybe I could put some information out on YouTube. You would reach more people with your message through means such as a film or video than an audience that's going to read a 300-page dissertation. So it is the anomaly. It is not the traditional approach, but it is an approach. And for those who have some skills in that area, it is one that there is an opportunity to explore and help us do better in that way. But anyway, when you come to Fielding, I really encourage you to take a media course. It's just, well, for me, because it's not my area of expertise, it's just like, wow, this is so fascinating.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Cynthia just said, because over the years, from the very beginning, Fielding has had non-traditional dissertations. And among my own students, I had one student who was an artist, and she worked at the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena. That's where at the time she was working there, or at the time she was doing her dissertation, that was when they were creating the Mars rover there. And she was an artist, and she used collage as a major way of doing the analysis of her data. I have another student who's now an alum from Jamaica, and she was a poet, and she was interviewing people who were retiring from the Jamaican military on their transition from the military to civilian life, in ways that could be improved. She was a poet, And her analysis included writing poems with the data that she was collecting for every one of her participants. Going back to the student who was at the Jet Propulsion Lab, her participants were Nobel Prize winners, and they were engineers who were working on the Mars rover. And she created the most amazing collages for all of her participants. So there is a wide variety of stories and a wide variety of approaches. It could be a very totally theoretical dissertation, could be totally statistical, it could be grounded theory. We match, as a student, you're responsible for finding, working with the faculty who can best support you in the direction of your interests and can best be there with you along the way. And I think Christy, well, she's gone already, but Cynthia can also describe that we don't abandon you, excuse me, when you're at the dissertation stage. We're there with you. I have a student who's a coach right now in Australia whose research is on coaching in India. And she and I meet every week as she's doing the analysis of her data. So it's like, if you can, a great phrase that I heard when I first came to fielding, and I repeat it often, and it's feel free, but please ask. And be free to imagine what you could do, and then work with faculty in order to figure out how to do it to fit within very clear academic scholar practitioner guidelines. And I think, Cynthia, you really described that in some of the stories that you've already told today.
Yes, yeah, I know. It's I want to just kind of repeat how much the faculty are supportive, and I have had faculty say, the questions that you are asking need to be asked, and I'm sure that, I'm not the only one who hears that, but it is very encouraging to hear that the questions matter. And then also I should say that one of the questions here is, what is your background? And so like Christy, I have worked and both in corporate and in nonprofit. But throughout my life, I have had this love of libraries. And so one of the things that I just love about fielding is that we have just a phenomenal library, and then also 2 librarians who can help us have access to it. But you can just search on any topic and find articles that are related to your topic of interest. I naively thought that I'd be able to come in and find journals that are, a set of journals that are linked to my interest. And the list of journals is humongous. There are just so many journals that we have access to, that if you have an interest, there is a journal that will have articles in it that you will find that catch your attention and that can help you kind of dig deeper into the subject. Oh, Christy, I think, had something. She's on the phone, so she might want to say something there. Okay, it looked as if she was going to try to say something. I also wanted to say something about the town halls, and I like the idea of town halls, and that is they are those that I'm familiar with. Again, I'm in my first year, have been around topics of concern, and what has made them, I think, useful is that we go into breakout rooms that might be 4 or 5 people, so that you can have some discussion, which really, when you have 100 people, cannot happen. And so I think that in terms of really using the tools that are available for distance learning, that Fielding has taken hold and shared them with students. We have our own Zoom accounts, we have access to libraries, we have access to faculty, to other students, so many tools that are available to us.
One of the things that I'll add on to what Cynthia just said is some of the most exciting, really in-depth learning experiences have to do with the conversations that we have. And this applies to doctoral education in whatever format you're in. And until we became really, really, really good in the virtual environment, it was hard to have the in-depth engagement with others if we weren't meeting in person. But in the past few years, that deep engagement is something that deep learning, relational, authentic engagement. And I'll give you an example. I'm one of the courses that I'm teaching right now. And most of you have a choice of having group courses or studying individually with a faculty person for almost all of your studies. There's lots of different options, even for learning. Do you learn best in groups or learn best one-on-one with faculty? Or, as most students do, a hybrid, mix them and match the way it suits you. But in last week's Zoom conversation with the students, and there were 10 students, most of our courses are somewhere between 8 and 10 students, a few larger, many smaller. We always have an introduction in which I ask people a question. And it can be something like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? And some people don't like ice cream. Or it can be something very deep and philosophical. It's different at the beginning of each meeting. But this was, we're studying metaphors and metaphorical analysis of organizations, organization development and change. And so I asked students at the very beginning of this 90-minute Zoom call, how has thinking about metaphors impacted your life in the past week? And this conversation actually lasted the entire 90 minutes. One woman spoke about how she was in a fender bender accident and the other person was furious, and she was going to be furious. And then she recalled what we're studying right now. Oh, she could change her metaphor, the way she's looking at that situation. Instead of being furious, which she felt the emotion immediately, she could work really hard to calm down the situation. And she said, she spoke on how she actually changed her approach based on the readings that we had the previous week with Gareth Morgan's Images of Organization. And that just led to some amazing stories of people who are visibly different from others in the group that they're in, and how they have begun to change their metaphorical lens, try out different metaphorical lenses. And this is what this conversation was, a learning conversation. It was not what we planned for that Zoom meeting, but it was deep and it was authentic, and it contributed immensely to that process of becoming a PhD, where you think more deeply, you try on alternate perspectives, and that enriches you in your life from the very beginning of the doctoral programs. It's not something that a switch turns on when you get your degree. It's something that changes for many of us, the way we view life from the very, really as we begin. And Cynthia, I know I knew you before you started the program, and you certainly are a stronger woman now, than more visible than you were when you began. And we all keep changing and growing. I think we have time for maybe one more wrap up comments, one more question. I do want to say one thing for all of you. You can say, in addition to being able to see this video, you can save the chat by going into the chat box, and there's 3 little dots on the right-hand side of the chat box. And one of your options is to download the chat. And I encourage you to do that so that you have your own copy on your computer of the conversation. And Cynthia, I think this would be a good time for you to have any final words and any additional questions from anyone that we have here.
Well, I just want to encourage you. I think just the fact that you're on this call today makes a statement. And it says that there's something inside your heart, I'll say, inside your spirit that is exploring this path. And I hope that this conversation has helped as you sort of look at what questions do you need to ask yourself and what more questions would you like to ask. And I hope that the path brings you to fielding and that we have a chance to have a dialogue. I look forward to meeting you.
And I see Christy is back also.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to keep listening, even though I wasn't on video. So thank you. I would welcome any of you to reach out through Dorothy or through Erica or Caroline if you'd like to have further conversation. And I will say, as Cynthia has mentioned too, we learn this, and we have it reinforced in human development and organizational development. We're changed every day by every interaction with every person and every experience. And I'm different an hour later than I was because I had a chance to be with this group. And we change a lot during a PhD process and a dissertation process. And if it's something that sounds like it's where your intellect and your heart and your scholarly and your economic resonates for you, let's talk more.
I just want to make a quick comment before we close up today. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience. Thank you all for who are considering, as Cynthia mentioned, it's just wonderful for you to be here and explore this. I know for us in admissions, one of the things that is most important to us is to really be able to articulate what our community is like, what the experience is like as a student. And it's just so valuable to have both of you here today to be able to talk about this and to capture it so well. So thank you for your authenticity and the conversation. And thanks all who joined us. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Bye.